International. It's time for the news.
The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has granted a periodic interview to the representatives of the national media, which will be broadcast this evening at 9 p.m. local time on the national television and radio channels. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has received a phone call from the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Joseph Borrell, with whom he discussed the worrying developments prevailing in Niger. And the Army Chief of Staff of the Economic Community of the West African States, ECOWAS, have met in Abuja, Nigeria, to examine what steps to take ahead of the expiry of an ultimatum given 1 week to the Niger authorities to restore constitutional order in the country. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. First, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has granted a periodic interview to the representatives of the national media, which will be broadcast this evening at 9 p.m. local time on the national television and radio channels. During the interview, President Tebboune tackled several national, regional, and international issues. The Speaker of the Council of the Nation, Salah Goujil, has extended his best wishes to the National People's Army on the occasion of the celebration of its National Day initiated by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. It's worth recalling that Algeria celebrated on Friday the National Day of the People's National Army initiated by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, in recognition of the pioneering roles of the military institution in the protection of the country and the accomplishment of its noble constitutional missions to ensure global security in accordance with an enlightened vision and in implementation of its perpetual cohesion with the Algerian people. The Minister of Energy and Mines, Mohamed Arkab, has taken part in the proceedings of the 49th meeting of the OPEC and non-OPEC Ministerial Monitoring Committee devoted to assessing the compliance with the agreement of the cut in oil production by the signatory countries for the months of May and June 2023. During the meeting held Friday via video conference, the ministers in charge of oil within the Control Committee examined the evolution of the world oil market and the prospects for its development in the short term. At the end of the meeting, Mohamed Arkab expressed satisfaction at the monthly data presented, which showed that OPEC Plus member countries have totally respected the required level of production. Now, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has received a phone call from the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Joseph Borrell, with whom he discussed the worrying developments prevailing in Niger. The two sides exchanged views and analyses on the development of the situation and its dangerous repercussions on the Sahel-Saharan region as a whole. Borrell informed the head of the Algerian diplomacy of the measures adopted by the European Union against the coup leaders in Niger. Both sides stressed the need to exert political and diplomatic pressure to ensure a return to constitutional order in the Republic of Niger through the return of Mohamed Bazoum to his position as the legitimate president of the country. The Algerian foreign minister reaffirmed on the occasion Algeria's conviction of the need to give priority to the political and diplomatic solution given the repercussions of the force or the option of force, which will only aggravate and deteriorate the situation on the local and regional level. And entrusted by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has received the special envoy of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Baba Gana Kigimbe. A press release issued by the Foreign Ministry said that on the occasion Mr. Attaf received from his host a written message addressed to the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, by his Nigerian counterpart, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in his capacity as current chairman of the Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS. The visit is part of an exchange of views and consultations on the developments in the situation in the Republic of Niger. Ahmed Attaf reaffirmed during the meeting Algeria's position, which rejects the military coup against the legitimately elected president of this brotherly and neighboring country and calls for his return to power as president of the Republic of Niger. And the Army Chiefs of Staff of the Community or Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, have met in Abuja, Nigeria, to examine what steps to take ahead of the expiry of an ultimatum given 1 week to the Niger authorities to restore constitutional order in the country. The commissioner in charge of the security and political affairs, Abdel Fattah Moussah, said the ECOWAS Army Chiefs of Staff had defined the outlines of a possible intervention, including the means necessary for the development or the deployment of force. The regional organization meeting on July 30th threatened to use force unless Niger President Mohamed Bazoum was reinstated. The new authorities, for their part, threatened to respond to any act of aggression. Several countries, including France, Germany, the Netherlands, and the United States, have suspended their aid programs in retaliation for the recent coup in Niger. And still in Africa, in Sudan, violent clashes today broke out between the government and the rapid support paramilitary forces in the southern and western parts of the capital, Khartoum. According to media, the fighting involving heavy weaponry was also raging in various districts south of Omdurman, west of Khartoum. The fighting that broke out over 3 months ago has claimed over 3,000 lives and caused the displacement of about 3 million people. Meanwhile, both the UNICEF and the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, have called for further financing and less bureaucracy to support the civilians hit by the war raging in Sudan. According to UNICEF, the war threatens the lives and future of children and young people who represent over 70% of Sudan's population. It stated that up to 14 million children were in need of humanitarian aid and are vulnerable as they face famine, diseases, and violence. The United Nations has announced the closing of its Human Rights Office in Uganda following the authorities' refusal to extend the accord authorizing the UN activities in the East African state. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Gerd, said that he regretted the closing of the UN office after 18 years of a close collaboration with the civil society and representatives of various horizons in Uganda. He also evoked the office's involvement for the promotion and protection of human rights of all the Ugandans, while recalling that it contributed to adjust the Uganda national legislation in conformity with international human rights laws and norms. To the Middle East now, where one Palestinian was today arrested by the Israeli soldiers in a camp north of Hebron in the West Bank. This came as the Israeli authorities had reinforced security and imposed more restrictions on the Palestinian population in various parts of the West Bank, including occupied Jerusalem. Meanwhile, the Resistance and Anti-Settlement League today put at 897 the number of attacks carried out for the past month by the Israeli soldiers and Jewish settlers against Palestinians. In its monthly report, it stressed that these acts of aggression include assaults on the Palestinian towns, including occupied Al-Quds. And former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan has been arrested after being sentenced for corruption to 3 years in prison. Imran Khan was arrested by Islamabad force officers in the eastern city of Lahore after a Pakistani trial court sentenced him to 3 years in prison for illegally selling state gifts. The 70-year-old cricketer turned politician was accused of misusing his premiership minister from 2018 to 2022 to buy and sell gifts in state possession that were received during visits abroad and worth more than $500,000. And finally, at least 10 people have been killed in floods that hit the Hebei province as a result of torrential rains that have battered northern China. Storm Doksuri, a former super typhoon that hit mainland China last Friday, has brought the most severe rains since records began 140 years ago. Hebei province, which neighbors Beijing, has been one of the most affected by the rains. Torrential rains hit northeast China for a second day, battering the province bordering Russia and North Korea. A red alert remains in force in Beijing due to geological risks such as landslides linked to the bad weather. Cleanup operations are ongoing after the largest rainfall in years, which destroyed infrastructure and flooded entire districts. China has been hit hard by extreme weather in recent months, from record-breaking heat waves to deadly rain. And with this, we come to the end of this news bulletin for today. Time now for our weekly programs, starting with my colleague Jamal Silmani with a program devoted to tourism. This will be followed by another program by my colleague Asya Bakar devoted to Yasmina Khadra. As for me, I'll meet you again tomorrow for a fresh edition of our news bulletin. And until then, stay tuned to Radio Alger International, and bye-bye for now.
Welcome to your weekly program, Destination Algeria. I'm Jamal Silmani. There are a number of great destinations in Algeria and waiting to be discovered. A curious mixture of cultures and influences. Algeria has something interesting to see in just about every city. The country is also the first largest on the African continent, so you can be sure that there are plenty of towns and cities to visit. Let's visit Algeria's fascinating destinations, you and I together. Stories of dinosaurs have long fueled the imaginations of humans, with ongoing discoveries in different parts of the world providing more information on these gigantic prehistoric creatures and offering theories on what led to their extinction. Fossilized remains of dinosaurs have been found in a number of North African countries, including here in Algeria. With each discovery being important in piecing together the history of the various species of dinosaurs and their habitats. Fossils of the genus Brachiosaurus were first discovered in the Grand River Canyon of western Colorado, United States, and were described in 1903 by American paleontologist Elmer Riggs, who declared it to be the largest known dinosaur at the time. Fossil remains were discovered in the Sahara Desert of eastern Algeria and were assigned in 1960 the genus Brachiosaurus, with the species Nogardi distinguishing it from other dinosaurs in the genus, although there is some dispute as to whether this classification is correct. Fossils recovered from the site included a scrum, some phalanges, and some of the left metacarpals. The scrum, a triangular bone at the base of the spine in the back part of the pelvis, measured a length of 130 centimeters for 4 vertebrae, being exceptionally large compared with Brachiosaurus species discovered elsewhere. Named for the country where it was first discovered, fossil remains of the Nigersaurus have been found in Niger, Tunisia, and southern Algeria. It was first described by French paleontologist Philippe Taquet in 1976. The skeleton and skull of this plant-eating dinosaur is filled with airspace, making it light and somewhat delicate and not able to withstand the ravages of time and the elements, and it was only in 2005 that a fuller description of the skull and feeding habits of the Nigersaurus was made. Scientists Paul Sorino and Jeffrey Wilson noted that the Nigersaurus had as many as 500 to 600 teeth set in up to 50 columns along the front edges of the jaw. As one set of teeth was sworn down by the dinosaur's fibrous diet, it was immediately replaced by another set, which most likely happened on a monthly basis. Fossils of more than 36 different types of dinosaurs have been discovered in Algeria, including the largest meat-eating dinosaur known to have lived on the Earth. The study of these amazing creatures is both fascinating and complex, opening a window to the prehistoric past of Algeria, this North African country. Today, in the second part, we introduce you to Algerian artist Mohamed Zmirli. He was born in the province of Tizi Ouzou on the 18th of February 1909. Having been orphaned at a young age, he had to leave school to earn a living, which he did by painting peacocks and roosters on items of furniture. At the age of 15, he managed to make his way to Algiers, where he discovered his talent for the fine arts, completing his first still life painting in 1930. Beginning what was to be a successful career, during which time he made a significant contribution to the cultural and artistic heritage of his home country of Algeria. Mohamed Zmirli held his first exhibition in 1935 and regularly exhibited his works at various events, including those organized by the Union of Artists of North Africa, the Société des Arts et Lettres d'Algérie, and Artistes Libres. He was said to be a great admirer of the works of Algerian artist Mohamed Rassim, who was renowned for his miniaturist paintings and was considered to be the founder of this unique style of art. In 1944, he met with Mohamed Rassim, where the subject of an exhibition of Rassim's students and other Muslim painters was discussed. In collaboration with the newly established Cercle Franco-Musulman, the first exhibition of its kind was arranged in Algeria, where the works of 13 artists were displayed in an event that was a great success. This led to various cultural exchange programs with other countries. Awards received by Mohamed Zmirli include UAAN Honorable Mention in 1937 and 38, the Prize Chicken Award in 1945. Awards made posthumously include a decoration by the President of the Algerian Republic, a silver plate from the Minister of Culture. Mohamed Zmirli dedicated his life to promoting Algerian art, and in recognition of his efforts, an art gallery is named after him at the House of Culture of Tizi Ouzou, as well as a room at the National Museum of Fine Arts of Algiers. He died on the 9th of December 1984 in Algiers and was buried in his hometown of Tizi Ouzou in Algeria.
Artwork, a weekly program that tells stories flavored with art.
Shabi, or popular music in Algeria, can be translated as Algerian portraits.
Yeah, Algerian portraits. It's about profile.
Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to our program, A Story in an Artwork. Today we're going to talk about the novel and bestseller What the Day Owes the Night by Yasmina Khadra. The novel What the Day Owes the Night tells the story of Yunus and his daily life as a little boy, then as a young man, and finally as a mature man in an Algeria torn by passions and war. At the beginning of the novel, we are in 1930. Yunus was only 9 years old when he saw his father's fields ablaze just a few days before the harvest. He sees his father cry for the first time, and the family have to give up the land of their ancestors and leave. They go to settle in Oran in the miserable district back then of Jnan Jatu, and the father, full of courage, is quick to find a job and sweat hardly to win his bread and feed his family. There, young Yunus discovers both the inevitable misery his family is destined to go through, but also the hope that energizes the inhabitants of the patio. But nothing goes as planned, and bad luck seems to be hitting the family, especially since the very proud father refuses any kind of financial help from others. His difficult conditions, however, make him give up his pride and trust young Yunus with his brother. The uncle of Yunus was in better financial situation as he was a pharmacist. He was even married to a French woman. Both have no children and consider Yunus as their own son and ensure his education while taking good care of him. Yunus, however, never sees his family again, as he says in this passage. I never saw my mother or my sister again. I do not know what has become of them, if they are still of this world or if they are nothing more than dust among the dust. But I saw my father several times, about every 10 years, sometimes in the middle of a souk or market, or on a building site, sometimes alone, at the corner of a street or on the steps of an abandoned shed. I never succeeded to approach him. I had come to understand that he was not flesh and blood. His new environment starts to call him Jonas, European for Yunus, and the young boy lives divided between his Algerian origins and his French education and environment, just like his name, Jonas and Yunus. His uncle gets arrested by French colonial authorities because of his intellectual solidarity with the Algerian national cause, which was then spreading in the literate circles of the city. When he gets released, he will never be the same again, and the family moves outside the city to Rio Salado, now El Maleh. Yunus, or now Jonas, gradually makes friends there and integrate himself into the city's Romis or European community. He lives happy days with his friends who became indispensable to him. They are called Simon, Jean-Christophe, and Fabrice. They share their dreams of privileged teenagers and watch from afar the arrival of World War II and the rise of Algerian nationalism. And of course, as teenagers, they are also interested in girls. It is Emily, an exceptional, pretty young woman whom Yunus knew when he was younger, who creates division among the friends who are now grown-ups. She comes back to settle in the village and gets admired by all of Yunus' friends, but it is him that she loves. He loves her back but because of a promise he made to Emily's mother, with whom he had a very brief affair. He cannot give in to loving Emily, who eventually marries Simon, his friend. Yunus also does not want to betray his friends, which makes him suffer all his life and feel alone and misunderstood. The struggle of Algeria for independence invades the heart of Yunus when he is unable to commit and take a side. He feels the urge to help his people, but he does not get involved. In a war for freedom, colonial Algeria lives its last moments, and while the three fronts tear each other apart for the love of a woman, Emily, the two peoples, Algerians and French, fight for a country that everyone loves madly, as the author says in this passage. It was predictable. There was a people lying on the ground on which you walked as if on grass. It was clear that one day or another they would stand again on their feet. As for Emily, her husband Simon dies during the Algerian Revolution, and she leaves to France, leaving behind her life in Algeria and her love for Yunus, who comes to a decision to be with Emily when it's too late, as we understand from this passage. Whoever misses the most beautiful story of his life will only be regretful, and all the sighs of the world cannot sway his soul. In What the Day Owes the Night's novel, Yasmina Khadra doesn't only tell a story, but also shares with the reader, through his characters, quotes on love, life, humanity, and inner struggle. It is also a book full of wisdom, where a lot of things are said between the lines. The novel also shows life of colonial Algeria from 1930 to 1962, during which Algerians were either marginalized or submitted to the French culture, but in both cases they were subject to racism on their own soil. Literary terms, Yunus or Jonas can seem enigmatic. He seems to live his life as a spectator and follows his destiny as if his life was mapped out by others. Quote, "Though there are things beyond our understanding, for the most part we are the architects of our own unhappiness." Unquote. Yunus may also be a symbol of the colonized people who tried to fit in the world imposed by the colonizer but could never surpass their origins. In addition to becoming a bestseller, What the Day Owes the Night won several awards, among which were Best Book of the Year by Lire magazine in 2008, the France Television Award, and the Berlin International Literature Award in 2010. The novel was also brought to the screen by Alexander Arcady in 2012, and the movie was a success as well. And though it was not 100% faithful to the novel, it made the story of Yunus and the name of Yasmina Khadra known worldwide.
Yunus! Yunus!
Je me souviendrai toujours de cette nuit affreuse.
That's it for today's program, A Story in Artwork. Do join us, dear listeners, next week for another story.
Je sais pas qui vous êtes, je sais pas d'où vous venez, mais je m'appelle Jonas.
Qu'est-ce que je t'ai fait, Jonas?
A Story in an Artwork. A weekly program that tells stories flavored with art.